activity is part of is EDIRE. So it's a Horizon Europe project, which stands for Equality, Diversity, Inclusion for Research Enhancement. And SSST in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina is the coordinator, and we have 4 partners from EU universities that we are doing the twinning activities with. So the idea is that we raise excellence in EDI research at SSST, but also throughout our journey through this twinning activities to also include other institutions from the region, from the Western Balkan regions, so that we can share this knowledge and hopefully encourage others to also get on this path. Okay, so today the discussion that we were supposed to lead was with our respected Professor Vesna Žabkar from University of Ljubljana. So she's actually a professor and a dean for research in at the Faculty of Economics and Business, and her research is covering consumers and their behavior, especially in terms of sustainability. So that's a very important topic in terms of equality, diversity, inclusion. Our other panelists will looking forward to join us soon. Jovana Mihajlović-Trbot is also based in Slovenia, but hailing from Serbia, and she's working at the research center of the Slovenian Academy of Arts and Sciences. So she's especially active in engendering in STEM disciplines. Okay, and I'm Jasminka Hasic. I'm the coordinator of this project. Also, I'm a professor in computer science, actually, but I'm very much interested in EDI and especially gender issues. So what I wanted to what we wanted to kick this discussion off with is to sort of look at where do we stand in the region of the Western Balkans. So for that, I will just present a few slides that come from the RCC, Regional Cooperation Council, which is an entity based in Sarajevo, but it covers the countries of the Western Balkans. And they have actually done the mapping of the gender-related policies, programs, and mechanism on gender disparity in some disciplines in the Western Balkans. So our region is quite specific. And in terms of gender, there are some things that we are actually not that bad in. So we are doing okay in, while of course we still have a lot of room for improvement. And this is the ranking of the Western Balkan countries. And we see that Albania is actually leading with ranking on the 20th place and overall score of 0.769, followed by Serbia. And then we have the Bosnia, North Macedonia, and Montenegro, placed right next to each other, ranked 67, 70, 71. And the Kosovo is not actually ranked, it wasn't ranked in 2020 by the data, the World Economic Forum. And then if we are to look at this a bit more closely, we can go by each individual country. So the key finding of Albania are the number of girls educated in science is commendable. So 49% of graduates are women, so we have parity there. And this is not a common in this region, as you will see. But things become more unequal as we move along in the careers, right? The gender equality framework is placed and mostly in line with the EU framework, but it's lacking specific references to women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. None of the documents that they have analyzed, the RCC analyzed for this report, seem to be relevant for STEM. And there is authority to gender mainstream, but it's not always exercised. STEM is not envisioned as a field of priority, which attests to a lack of coherent approach to tackle mismatch of demand. And civil society is the only stakeholder that's promoting women in STEM in Albania. So there is the Network of Women in Science and the Women to Women initiative, which are the most notable, and they address these issues in Albania. We're going in alphabetical order of the countries. So next one is Bosnia-Herzegovina. We have actually a proportion of women researchers that is surpassing that of men. Every fourth student in technology is a woman, every third is engineering, while in math, women outnumber men. Gender gap exists regarding the choice of profession on the labor market, which is impacting women, if they happen to be active, and they happen to be actually more inactive than men. And the traditional employment sectors, the traditions remain, and also salaries issues. So there's the gender gap, and women often opt out of entrepreneurship. So there's a glass ceiling for women in terms of management positions in research and development institution and business in general. Gender, of course, there are gender action plans, but they don't respond to the needs of engaging more women in STEM areas. And the science and technology development, as well as innovation policy documents, are gender blind, developed without gender policy analysis and without encompassing measures that will enhance gender equality. So while we have some good starting points, there's still a lot of work ahead of us. So in Kosovo, every third student in engineering is female. There are 2 policy documents that I mentioned that mention STEM or gender, but none really target STEM in particular. There is policy institutional framework for gender mainstreaming that is currently producing results for women in STEM. Limited initiatives are undertaken, not by national or local policymaker, but by international governments and non-governmental organizations. And there is the Millennium Foundation Kosovo, which is the only one that's specifically focusing on empowering women in STEM fields. So this was in a few years back, and I know actually about other initiatives in Kosovo that are working on these topics as well. Now in Montenegro, there is education segregation, meaning that there is a disparity in men and female, and also in a gender gap is also in the labor market. The number of women researchers actually dropped below 40%. It used to be higher. Emphasis is put on science, innovation, technology, but there is actually limited benefit for women. The only systematic approach to promote and support women in STEM is by public university. And there was a good practice, a professor from Montenegro that's exploring gender gaps in STEM discipline in 11 different countries in the world. In North Macedonia, 70% of women either drop out during their studies or later in their career in STEM. So there's a big dropout rate, while ICT companies are the main promoter of women technology and technological industrial zones. There is gender segregation in the field of study and in the research and development, despite the fact that 90% of researchers are women. So we have a lot of women, but then there are in the fields, if we look at individual fields, there is a great difference how men and male are involved. Men and women are involved. Vertical and horizontal gender segregation per sector and per position they occupy can be observed also in the labor market. And the Fund for Innovation Technology Development is an exception. that's supporting women business in STEM fields and promoting women in STEM by local groups if in its infancy. Is Serbia, so that was the second best ranked country from the Western Balkans in terms of gender in general. Women participate at par in higher education as students and graduates and account for over 40% in STEM fields. So again, you know, this region has higher participation of women in STEM fields than probably most regions in Europe. Women outnumber men in research, but as support staff, which suggests the glass ceiling is observed in the management. The policy framework recognizes gender gap in science and technology and includes measures to respond to the situation. So the policy framework is in place. The instruments for implementation of gender equality objectives actually failed to benefit women. Thus, a specific funding mechanism in science, technology, development, innovation for women and entrepreneurs is promoted. So overall, some of the recommendations that were given for the region is to actually gather the data in a uniform way in education, science, and technology, and of course make them sex, genders desegregated so that they can be more easily analyzed. So there's still an issue with that. Then promote women in STEM education, support campaigns focused on breaking stereotypes and promoting benefits of pursuing STEM education for girls as for boys. Support policy reform where STEM will be specifically targeted and analyzed so the tailor-made response is developed. Support gender mainstreaming. Use CSO's workings on gender equality as most valuable asset for promoting gender parity in STEM. Promote regional initiatives using all available instruments. Provide mentorship programs. Provide internship programs. Okay, so those are sort of like the standard mechanisms that we have to work and improve gender equality overall. So to summarize, you know, the overall status, you know, in the region, in terms of higher education, females are often present, and even in these like traditionally what is considered male-dominated fields, we have across, you know, different countries, we have very good participation, and this is something that's traditional, and in some places actually some drops are being noticed. So therefore, even that in the participation is also something that we need to work on. But when it comes to later on stages in the careers and where women end up in the labor market, which positions, and in terms of also decision-making power, we see significant drops, and therefore it is an important issue to address. So as a result of these findings, RCC is actually making a lot of activities. They help support Women in STEM initiative, which is a Western Balkans initiatives, and it's a good platform where women from these six regional countries are actually able to meet almost regularly, twice a year, and share experience and discuss how to proceed and make these issues and also implement all these programs that are suggested here, like mentorship, internship, and campaigns, and so forth. So that's what we wanted to start today's discussion as by introducing, you know, our region of the Western Balkans. And Jovana is with us. Yes, okay, great. I didn't notice as Jovana joined us. So yes, so we have two of our panelists, and perhaps for the introduction, maybe I can, Vesna, you can take the floor and you can tell us, from your perspective on the EDI and usage in the higher education. And if you can, you're from Slovenia, so this is the place that's already long EU member. But it would be good. I'm sure you're familiar with the the Western Balkan, and if you can sort of give us some insights and advice how to better integrate in all these European processes.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I can give a little bit of, let's say, my personal experience and some on the surface overview of how things are in Slovenia. I'm not sure about advice. I'm not so wise in this area, but certainly we just recently celebrated 20 years of joining European Union, and this certainly shows in several aspects. And it's maybe some issues are a little bit better than in what you presented in Western Balkans, but certainly there is still a lot of room for improvement. If I actually, when I was looking for the information on equality, diversity, and inclusion, most of it, what I found was the Slovenian-based data. So I'm not sure if I shared that with you on the screen, how much will it actually make a difference. But for instance, if I start with the study that was done by Statistical Office recently, so it covers the most recent completion of tertiary education by females. So they were looking at females who were completing university studies, and 20% of them finished business or law, 17% finished healthcare studies, 15% of females were in education, 12% in social sciences, and what you're interested in, let's say math, statistics, and natural sciences, there were just 6%. So I guess in that sense, there is still room for improvement. Then I further looked into what is University of Ljubljana, what we recently published. Just get this moving. So the University of Ljubljana did a study on its own employees in terms of assistants, associate professors, full professors, in terms of gender. And if we look at the assistant level in, let's say, STEM area, 80% of assistants already are males. 20% of females enter as assistants. And then when we get to full professors in STEM area, they're just 15% of females. So, but the starting point is already low. Whereas on the other hand, on biotechnology, it seems to be more female-oriented. So we have 60% of assistants who are females, and then about 40% full professors who are females. In my area, in social sciences, it's again almost 70% of females that start as teaching assistants, and then when we get to full professors, it's about 1/3 or 36%. And so this is in terms of academic ranking, and University of Ljubljana is actually the biggest university inside of Slovenia, and it covers about 6,000 employees, so teachers and supporting staff. And then I looked also in the structure according to roles in terms of deans, vice deans, and let's say chief secretary. And interestingly, the deans at the University of Ljubljana are 26% are females. So the 2/3 and more, actually 3/4 actually are males. In terms of vice deans, the situation is a little bit better, but still 60% males. And then when we get to chief secretaries, which are running the whole, let's say, all these institutions, 70% of chief secretaries are actually females. Probably not too surprising. So if we take the leaderships of the academic institutions inside of the University of Ljubljana, it's total, it's 60% males and 40% females. And then there was also a survey done recently at the University of Ljubljana of how satisfied are its employees in terms of gender equality. And I have to say that from that survey, it seems that the vast majority are actually quite satisfied. So it's together, it's something like 60% of people who, both males and females, said that they are satisfied or very satisfied. So they don't seem to see a problem, or the ones who actually see problems are just very unsatisfied or just 2 to 5%. So that's actually a short overview of what I can say in terms of equality, diversity, and inclusion. And of course, this is an interesting research topic. I have seen that there are a lot of projects going on, and they started somewhere at the late 90s. So this is a topic that goes now for 25 years. That's why I believe we are supposed to see some results in one way or another. Maybe that's so much from my side for now.
Okay, for start, I have some questions for you, but let us hear from Jovana now. You know, she's also based in Slovenia, but hailing from the Western Balkans. So she has this inside-outside perspective, right?
Yes. Thank you, Jasminka, very much. What I'm going to say is not going to be based only on my experience of working in Slovenia and being from Serbia, therefore also having this kind of awareness and information, but also it will stem from the research that actually my team is conducting at the moment, where we are analyzing equality, diversity, inclusion policies in different countries in Eastern Europe and particularly Balkan region. So, for instance, Romania, Serbia, and including Slovenia. And I would agree with what you said at the beginning, that we should be aware that gender equality indicators for our region are not bad at all compared with Western countries. And what I have to offer in this debate is a bit of reflection on how we are approaching the issue of equality, diversity, inclusion in our region. So I think what we should do is look again, have a good look in our data, and some of the data you presented are a very good starting point. And I think we should rethink activities bearing in mind the local context. So not to jump necessarily into a way of working in which we are just adopting Western style initiatives, policies, and so forth, but rather look into our data in order to recognize and see what are our specific challenges, and then rethink what kind of activities would suit these specific challenges. So for instance, as you showed, in many of our countries, we have very high participation of girls, young women in higher education in STEM area. So our target should not be, simply inviting girls to study, ICT or STEM subjects, but rather we should maybe focus our energy on mid-level students who are deciding how to specialize their undergraduate studies, their diploma, and for instance, suggest to young women studying mathematics that they don't necessarily have to be, you know, mathematics teachers in primary and high school, but rather that their knowledge could be utilized also in more competitive areas like business or scientific research or academia. So in this sense, I would invite a bit of more caution in just adopting the Western practices. And the second point that I want to make today is that while we are talking about equality, diversity, and inclusion, we are mostly researching gender, or, you know, looking at gender parity, number of women in different positions, but diversity and inclusion should be subsuming also other types of identity traits, which are casting certain people into group of a minority. Therefore, we should think how ethnically diverse our communities in STEM are, both in business, academia, higher education. How many people with disabilities we have in the computer lab. And also how LGBT friendly and safe our working environments are. And for these issues, what I noticed in the region of Balkans is that we are generally lacking the input data. So while it's fairly easy to count how many men and women we have in certain department or certain business, we usually do not collect information on their ethnicity, on their sexuality, sexual orientation. Maybe the disability is something that can be visible, but not all disabilities are equally visible. So, and this is a tricky part, because usually what I've noticed by analyzing the legislation in all of these countries is that usually there is some type of a legal barrier that does not allow an employer to ask this kind of questions their employees, because they are considered to be private. Therefore, we should rethink how we are collecting data in this. And one suggestion would be, you know, anonymous type of survey that would have a large turnout, but which would not identify a respondent with a name and surname. So getting some data would be a start. But in the case studies that we are working on right now, and I don't have conclusive answers, but I have research insights that I can share. What we have noticed is that there usually are not many written policies on equality, diversity, and inclusion. Most of the institutions have gender equality plans, because this is something required by the Horizon program, but they don't necessarily, or usually they don't have, you know, diversity charter, or you know, plan for inclusion of certain groups or something like that. However, it doesn't mean that institutions are completely blind or unresponsive to the concrete needs. So what we have noticed in our research is that there are a lot of informal, unwritten practices that institutions are actually doing without written policies. So when you look at them from afar, it seems that there is nothing going on. However, in practice, I think it's a matter of level of sensitivity in particular organizations, and of course, not even all departments of one faculty or all faculties of one university are the same. So this is where the differences appear. But for instance, if there is a student in a wheelchair, usually department recognizes this as an issue, and they organize schedules of the lectures in such a way that they are taking place in the rooms that are accessible for wheelchairs. This is usually not written anywhere, but this is what we found in practice. So also analysis of these informal practices should be part of our understanding of the field. That's for the start. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's even better. There is a culture already existing, but it's not documented, you know. But yes, but I feel like, you know, for yeah, coming back to gender, sorry again, you know, we pride ourselves, you know, we have like these good starting numbers, but then I feel like there, you know, there's still quite a lot of resistance to formalize this and come up with this next step gender, you know, because a lot of people indicate that gender is not an issue. You know, we have, you know, women and, you know, therefore it's done. It's kind of like, you know, tick, and it's, you know, we have more important problems to worry about, you know. So this is kind of something, a resistance that that I've been, you know, coming across, and I feel like that may be the leftover of that good initial standing, you know, that, you know, we don't have such drastic parity, so that, you know, it's harder for us to put this up as an issue, right? But then, you know, the ethnicity, you know, in Bosnia, we always analyze everything by ethnicity. So while I do, you know, believe it's important, and it's, again, you know, we kind of want to move on from it at sometimes, you know, and but in general, maybe not in other countries. There is not so much focus on ethnicity, and I think, yeah, maybe that's also. But maybe, you know, to come back to non-gender EDI topics, if I could ask you, Vesna, maybe if you can tell us about how do you include EDI in your research in economics, you know, so you are working on sustainable and responsible consumption. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about that, so we move on from gender for a little bit at least.
Yeah, so in terms of responsible and sustainable consumption, our focus is on general population. And it started when my daughter was a teenager, and she asked me, "Mom, why are you doing all this research in marketing? Marketing is causing so many problems to the world." So that was from the eyes of a teenager, and it actually did direct my research into the area of showing her and actually proving that marketing can be also a solution to a problem by understanding how humans respond to specific stimuli. We can as well direct them to respond in a positive way, in an inclusive way, in a responsible way. So that's actually where research is going. And I have a research team of 25 researchers from my school, and they are from the fields of economics research, meaning that they are interested in how institutions work in the area of sustainability. Then in the area of management, meaning that they look into how decision makers in companies behave or should behave and direct their decisions. And then we have a group that deals specifically with consumer behavior and marketing aspects. So in a way, we are a multidisciplinary team covering different aspects of sustainability, with our goal of how to actually achieve sustainable growth, so that the growth of society is actually sustainable. And with sustainability, we understand activities that are needed, that we are actually satisfying our needs, but at the same time ensuring that also future generations will be able to have a quality of life and satisfy their needs. So this covers mostly aspects of taking care of the environment, natural environment, then taking care of social responsibility, and this is probably where the social aspect comes in. I have to say that this was so far covered mostly from the perspective of companies, how social responsible they are in responding to the needs of their employees, to the needs of the societies around them, to the needs of their customers. So this is where we partly covered equality, diversity, and inclusion topics. And I have to say that findings from big companies and small companies show that they are much more advanced in their thinking of how they should protect the natural environment, but this social aspect seems to be coming with one or two steps behind that. That's what research shows. I would like to respond a little bit to what actually Jovana was telling about different cases and studies that her team is doing. And I would like to bring here back our university as an example. I have to say that mostly what is done in this area is actually presented, but only in a Slovenian language, which means that to the external world is less available and less presentable. But certainly from the content, it covers like trustful persons that students and employees can turn to. So it covers mental health, psychosocial consulting. It covers socioeconomic inclusion, students with special needs. And what I find very interesting is what is actually one of the things that is prepared is they're also thinking about talented students. So how should we actually not only worry for students with special needs, but actually talented students are also out of these average and probably deserve or should be approached with special opportunities. And so that's actually also part of the activities that I see that university is doing in terms of equality, diversity, and inclusion.
Thank you very much, Vesna. So maybe Jovana, if you have some preliminary research on the barriers, from the region and some insight in that, that would be something that I would like to, because it's very practical and very needed, for everyone. So if you can have, share any ideas on that, that would be very, very helpful.
Yes, I will do that. But also, I have a need to respond to what you said, bearing in mind the specific context of Bosnia and Herzegovina after, the war. That in a way, ethnicity is everywhere, and we are fed up of it. And I agree with you. This is particularly why I think we should always go from the particular context. So, for instance, in case of Bosnia, we should move away from this, tripartite focus on the three dominant ethnicities, but rather maybe think in wider sense. And by that, I'm going to bring these examples from the cases we are doing at the moment. So, for instance, when we were analyzing a case study of an institution in Slovenia, we found a lot of these like unwritten practices that just come from the fact that certain institutions, especially those in STEM, are much more open to foreigners from third countries as migrant workers. I mean, as workers who are migrants. And in their life within the EU, they are facing a lot of administrative challenges. And actually, the institution is engaging in solving these issues. For instance, they were recently renovating a canteen where all employees are supposed to eat. And then they created new menus, which were bilingual, Slovenian and English, because they realized they have a certain amount of foreigners who don't speak Slovenian. So therefore, maybe what I said before about ethnicity, we should think about other categories like migration, citizenship, or non-citizenship. But also we should think about, different historical contexts. So for instance, a case study of an institution from Romania showed us that in Romania, they have quite large Romani or Roma population, like in all Balkan countries, but in Romania, there may be, even in larger percent. And there is a certain, in 90s, there was introduced a certain type of stimulation quota system, which allows Romani students to easier access higher education and scholarships. And while this system works quite successfully, as within Faculty of Sociology, where social work is situated, and lots of people from this background actually work in social type of services or NGOs, working with vulnerable populations. However, this quota system, though it's based in the, in general law, is working quite differently or not working at all in departments and faculties, which are either more traditional and conservative, like history or law, or in STEM departments where there is virtually no Roma students who would even apply for these kind of studies. So the context, I think, tells us a lot. I mean, we should analyze deeply context and then devise, certain policies, for instance, targeting specifically certain minority or vulnerable populations into those types of professions which have higher chance of, elevating somebody's, economic and life standard. Also, what we noticed is that in certain countries, like in Serbia, this turned out to be the case, but also in Poland, is that there is a very strong so-called anti-gender movement in politics, in clerical religious circles, and in parts of civil society. And in a way, before, like 5 years ago, before you had a hype of gender equality plans at every institution, it seems that some gender issues went under the radar of these religious communities. Once these issues became, more vocal and more part of the public agenda, then all of a sudden there was even more backlash. And this backlash is in certain contexts creating concrete challenge in executing, equality policies, specifically when they are connected with gender-sensitive language, which is usually very political issue or considered to be political issue in many Slavic-speaking countries.
Yes, we are unfortunate that our language is very gendered. Everything is a gender, so a lot of changes need to be done to make it gender sensitive. Yes, so that's a very good point, Yamana. So I actually, like, our time is running out. I feel like we just started. But I would like to actually give an opportunity to our partners, especially from the EU countries who are still getting familiar with this region, to to take an opportunity and ask questions. And we see Sarah. I think Sarah was triggered, knowing Sarah's research interest by what you just said, Jovana. So let's start, Sarah, with your question.
Yes, well, I will start with a comment. I found it, Giovanna, very, very interesting. You raised the question of context sensitivity and the idea we have all this data, and in order to design solutions for the situation that you find there, there is a danger of just take policies that are being implemented in other countries, for instance, in Western Europe, because the situation is very different. I just want to contribute with a reflection. Katrina and I, we have been doing research in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And one thing that we find is that there is a kind of black box. It's a kind of black box that needs to be open in order to have these context-sensitive policies. Jasminka, in her presentation, pointed to a very clear problem, as the data shows, of a glass ceiling. Despite the numbers being much better than in Western Europe, there is a glass ceiling in the careers of women researchers. So this is the data that we have, but then there is the black box that needs to be open. What are the factors explaining this glass ceiling? Because these factors may not be the same factors of a glass ceiling in other countries. So there is a need to get, data that maybe not just be quantitative, but also qualitative, to try to understand in each context, and sometimes it will be institutional, national, what are the reasons for these issues, for instance, the glass ceiling there. And we found, Katrina and I, that there is very little research on that in the region. So I think that in order to kind of tackle this and context sensitivity, research on the factors, specific factors in those contexts will be, to tackle problems that are clear from the data, for instance, at glass ceiling. So yeah, very interesting to bring that issue, Giovanna.
Okay, thanks very much, Sarah. I don't know if you have any question, Jovana, or should we let Cynthia also, if you have any response? Yes, okay. Yes, Cynthia, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much for your very interesting insights about this topic that, it is of great interest for us. I'm very interested in the situation of Slovenia because I had the chance to cooperate with one professor from the University of Ljubljana for a long period. And I know that many issues, political and social issues, are there. In particular, my question is related to disability and inclusion instances, because I know for sure that there are, open issues there. I had the fortune and not only the chance to meet with Elena, Miss Elena, I don't remember the surname, I'm so sorry, that she's an activist for disability, persons with disability in Slovenia. I know she has been also a candidate for the presidency in the past. Maybe you can help me with the surname, sorry. So I'm very interested in this kind of approach because, as you said, and this is what I noted also in my investigation during last years, that, for example, when considering the differences and the gender approach in countries like Slovenia, we have to consider a gender plus approach because because in Italy we have different history. So I'm from Italy, and if we compare, for example, numbers between Slovenia and Italy, for sure Italy is a disadvantaged country in terms of numbers. But still, we know that numbers maybe cannot be representative of a situation in our countries. So in Italy, unfortunately, they are. But as far as the history of our countries, I know for sure that, for example, also in some Eastern countries, the inclination towards, for example, the study of engineers or other STEM domains are very different than in Italy. And therefore, I'm interested in a particular aspect. If you can naturally clarify me about how to say a more extensive approach towards gender equality and inclusion. Thank you.
Jovana would like to respond? Yes.
Yeah, maybe I can respond to the first part regarding the state of disability inclusion in Slovenian and other academias. I think what we should bear in mind when looking at the local context is the level of or the state of infrastructure of these institutions. I'm sure that Vesna from University of Ljubljana can confirm. Sometimes we are dealing with old buildings that require renovation, not to make them only disability friendly or inclusive, but just to keep them running and functioning. And in this sense, the situation is much, much worse in countries which are poorer and where investments into higher education and research are lower. So when I pose this question, one of my informants when I was doing field research in Romania, she told me, what do you mean by this? And I was like, well, do you have, disability toilets? Are they available? And she started laughing and she said, we are happy if we have a toilet paper in our toilets. And I think this is a sad situation for many buildings. So you might have newly built campus that is by all standards and so on, but another department of the same faculty is in the 100-year-old building that is lacking proper heating. And this is the infrastructural priority. So by the law, all of our countries are obliged to be accessible as public institutions, to be accessible to wheelchairs. However, what I've noticed doing the field research is that, for instance, you have a 19th century old building and there is, access for wheelchairs on the main entrance. And then there is this electronic elevator for the staircase, which is not ideal because somebody, a person needs a help and so on. But then from the first floor onwards, half of the building is not actually accessible. So formally, the standards are fulfilled. Practically, this is something that I think diversifies. And as I said in my example before, sometimes you have a very positive examples of people simply solving situation on spot and spontaneously. However, this is not a welcoming environment for people with disability because, many of them would feel that they are not even invited in these buildings. But this is a long process, which takes a lot of investment. So this is also something we should bear in mind.
Okay, thank you, Jovana. So we should be really wrapping up. So maybe, Vesna, if you have any final comments, regarding. the discussion today? Maybe, you know, as you held this position as a vice dean for research at your faculty, you know, so maybe as a woman who attained this management position, maybe an advice how to do it, and, you know, is it worth it to encourage other women to do it? And, you know, that would be also
Yeah,
a good.
you're opening a big topic here. Certainly, well, to make a long story short, the mentoring is extremely important here. So if a female is a wise enough research, then she has a lot of, I had a lot of tools to actually support other young females. So I did quite a lot of my time devoted to encouraging young females who had small babies, who had different issues that made their research time very limited, but making it possible for them, at least with financial resources or with directions, with advising them, getting them on team to learn from more experienced researchers. So certainly there is a lot of space in having mentorship of females who actually understand the issues of other females, just to speak of the gender issue again. Just maybe touching on what Jovana said before, certainly the complexity of situation, not country level, but then inside, so because the culture then brings it, each aspects to it, but then also institutional level. You don't have to have a 19th century building. We have a 1970s building, which also one of our major investments in early years was to build an elevator for people with disabilities in movement. So there are context-related issues that refer to institutions, to the countries, and certainly learning from good experiences within the country and within specific institutions can help things on.
Great. Thanks very much. We are out of time, and I feel like, you know, we just started the topic, so we'll have to address it, you know, in one of our consequent panels or meetings. But I'm glad that we added some more people to the pool of EDIRE, and if you don't mind, we will add you to our your emails to our dissemination list, so you can, you know, hear from us and follow our development. And we're certainly looking forward to join all of our efforts to advance EDI in higher education. So thank you very much for participating, and stay in touch. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.